Well, God bless you one and all, and welcome back to the Bishop's Corner. And of course, my name is Bishop Dr. Herbert N. Scott, the Chief Prelate of Liberty Hall Cathedral of Praise, right here in the heart of Brooklyn. And certainly, we do want to thank God for the man of God himself, Philip Reed, who is affectionately known as Dr. Phil. Dr. Phil is doing a tremendous job, and man of God, we do applaud you for a job well done. Well, tonight we have a special program for one and all, and I'm certainly delightful to make mention of the topic tonight, managing confrontation and conflict. Managing confrontation and conflict. However, before we go into the program tonight, we just want to make known those who we have on. We want to thank God tonight for the Apostle Lucien Rojas, that's with us tonight. Man of God, certainly a pleasure, as usual, to have you on the Bishop's Corner. Next, we want to thank God for the man of God from up north, Bishop Dr. Neville G. Wolliston. Man of God, always indeed a pleasure. Next, we want to thank God for a dynamic young man all the way from good old Brooklyn, New York, Pastor Richard McKenzie Jr. God bless you, man of God. Always a pleasure. And we are delighted tonight to have the one and only Philip Reed, known as Dr. Phil. And naturally, he's sitting in for those who we don't have on tonight. And man of God, we want to thank God for you and for the wisdom that you always seem to display. Well, our topic tonight is managing confrontation and conflict. Subtopic: what we learn from the Oscars. What we learn from the Oscars. Well, I may not know the best film or the film of the year. I may not know who won the most awards, but one of the things that stood out is the thing that we will be talking about tonight. What we learn from the Oscars. Well, I've learned several things. Number one, people will be people. No matter what we say, people will indeed be people. And I also learned that people do process things differently. And each person is different from the other individual. Oh, yes. And sometimes we act according to our emotions and not according to our intellect. And sometimes we act one way because of the person or the persons we are with. And sometimes we act out of character because we are under stress. But one of the things I do know is this, that people will indeed be people. Okay, so hear me. The subtopic that we're dealing with is this: what we learned from the Oscar. And I'm going to ask every one of you at this time, just in a nutshell, to tell me, what is it that you as an individual learned from the Oscar? It's in your hands.
Well, thank you again, Bishop Scott. Good to be back again on the Bishop's Corner. So many things, so many messages, so many lessons. But in a nutshell, I would say a couple things. Number one, I already knew it, but I was reminded that words are powerful. Words are powerful, whether they are positive words or negative words, but words are powerful. You know, it was the Apostle Paul, I believe, talked about this little enemy, this little tongue, this little thing that is set on fire. I mean, words are powerful. Not only that, I also learned about our humanity. And I think you alluded to that, Bishop, that the human part of us, the humanity, and we look all the way through scripture and we see even Jesus himself, when the humanity, came out. We saw Elijah, was it, that, listen, I'm done. I want to die. Just let me go to sleep and don't wake up. And the list goes on. Peter cussing, chopping off ears. There's nothing spiritual about these men at that time. It was just their humanity And what I've learned from that is that I've got to learn to keep my humanity in check, because if I don't do it, you remember what Paul says, I keep under this body and I keep it under subjection, not like one that beats the air. So yeah, in a nutshell, words are powerful. And we see in the Oscars humanity come out.
Amen. And every now and then, especially when we don't want it to surface, it seems as if it has a mind of its own, and it just surfaces. And sometimes it surfaces at the wrong time and the wrong place. Because remember now that this is seen and this is known all over the world. Okay? How do you all say what we learned from the Oscar? Apostle?
Unmute.
Unmute, Apostle.
Yeah, I sorry about that. I learned about he lost in terms of the disease called apolesia. You know, it's where, you know, that was on the front line in terms of awareness, and so I learned that, and I learned that people can act in a way they shouldn't when they are under seemingly attack, you know, and that's what Will Smith did. Probably he's a nice guy, charitable guy. He probably have done a lot of good deed. I heard him speak once. He was very inspiring, very motivational, but in his low moment, he didn't act right. And we're not here to judge him, but he himself admit that what he did was wrong, and he asked for forgiveness. So, you know, you never know sometimes, and we're not making an excuse for it, what one can do in a moment of weakness, you know, and that's a learning situation for all of us. Yeah.
Before we should ask the others to chime in, is there anyone on the panel who have experienced that time in your life when you acted out of character? I think most of
plead the fifth. Plead the fifth.
Only myself and Dr. Phil.
We're pleading the fifth.
So, okay. What we learned from the Oscar, Pastor Richard McKenzie, listen, you're the same age as Will. No, you're younger than Will. I mean, much younger than Will. I mean, what did you learn from the Oscar? Not that what he did, you would do it, because I see you as calm and collective, an intelligent man of God.
Amen. Well, bless you, Bishop, and to the rest of the panel. God bless you tonight. As you have stated, this is the topic of discussion and has been for over a week now. So in terms of some of the things that I've learned, well, there's so much more to this story that obviously we can't go into tonight. But some of the things that I learned was, number one, the power of pain, and the fact that pain can allow you to do certain things that you didn't even realize that you were even probably capable of doing. Because if you know the whole story of Will and Jada, about 2 years ago, there was the Red Table Talk where things were revealed in their marriage, and things that he didn't even know about were put out there. And I believe that he was probably holding on to certain things for a long time and didn't have an opportunity to release it. And now in this opportune, quote unquote, time, you really see that not only did he release it, but he literally released it. So the power of pain. The second thing is the power of influence, because if you look at that moment when the joke was actually made, he laughs initially, but when he looks at his wife and sees the pain that was on her face, that's when he reacted. Because of the influence and seeing what she was going through. That's when he really got up and did what he did. Now, we know none of us are condoning doing what he did. There was probably 5,000 other ways that you could have handled that situation. But again, we're not here to judge. It is what it is. And another thing I would say is sometimes we lash out on, another thing that I got from it is sometimes we lash out on people because we don't, just because they're there. We project our hurt, we project our pain, we project the way that we're feeling on people just because they're in front of us. I'm sure that he may have wanted to handle that situation from the past and never had an opportunity to do it. But now that this individual was in front of him, I believe, and this might just be my belief, that he projected some of that pain, some of that hurt, some of that embarrassment on Chris because he didn't have the opportunity to deal with the person in the past. So the power of projection, the power of pain, the power of influence, and the power of projection.
Deep, man of God. Wow, what a message, man. I could preach from that. Oh, fantastic, fantastic. I mean, Dr. Phil, how say you?
Bishop, when I think about the Oscars, first of all, people have worked all their lives to receive, in the art of acting, to receive an award such as the Oscars.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
And so when you've reached that level and when you've reached that plateau, there is a lot of pressure. There is a lot that goes with that. Right. And so in the case of Will Smith and his wife, first of all, because you have a lot of money doesn't make you less human. Right. That's one of the things that I get from that is, because you have a measure of wealth, it doesn't take the emotion away from you. It doesn't take the human element out. And so, sometimes we see these actors on television and we have no idea what their journey was like. One of the most revealing actors, I believe, is Will Smith. Because they come out and they pretty much talk about everything that they deal with as I believe, as an aid to other people who might be dealing with the same situation.
Yes.
So when you see him in this light, it just shows you that everybody has their breaking point. I can never recall another moment in Will Smith's career where he responded to someone like this, right? And so I just think that sometimes, even subconsciously, things build up in us. Certain things just kind of start, bearing fruit and growing roots. And it's that tree inside our forest that we're not paying attention to. It's like, yeah, we have the kids and we have work and we have all these great things going on, and let's take a vacation. Let me go skydiving. Let me do all these different things. And you're not paying attention to that one weed in the middle of your garden that's just sucking you dry until it starts to take effect. And I feel very much like that's Will's journey, is that he just had that moment where everything was focused in on Chris Rock. Chris Rock became the focus of his frustration, and he took everything out on that poor man. And so, it's not even a justification of it, because it's just a matter of, it can happen to any one of us. Any one of us can hit a breaking point or hit a point in our life where we're unaware of something. And, what do you call it? You have a blind spot when you're driving, you have a blind spot. All of us have a blind spot. And so, I feel like this was his blind spot. And now that he's aware of it, I think it's going to happen again.
Hey, Dr. Phil, what would you say to someone, and I hear you and I agree with what you're saying, what would you say to someone that would say, well, my journey is similar. I've been through that. I've been through a whole lot, but I didn't do what he did. I was able to hold back. I was able to control myself. I'm sure there are many people who have been through similar situations, similar journeys, as you say, breaking point, but they didn't break somebody's neck or slap somebody's face. What would you say to somebody who respond like that?
what I would say is this: I've never been in a 6-car accident, but it's happened, right? I've never gone skydiving. I've never pulled a parachute, but people have done it, right? So because I've never experienced something doesn't mean somebody else can't experience it. And because they've experienced it, I don't know what my emotional limitation would be if I did experience it.
Mhm.
So unless you walk 2 miles in somebody else's shoes, you really can't say this is, they shouldn't have or they should have, because, 2 days in Apostle Rojas's shoes, I might want to, I might not be able to handle 2 days in his shoes, or Bishop Scott's shoes, or even your shoes, Bishop Wolliston. It's like, all of us have our pressures, but because I am who I am, I have a limitation as well. I know I have a breaking point. There's certain things that I really don't like people to do. And, sometimes I don't take it lightly.
Can I piggyback on that real quick? Can I piggyback on that, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know that the Bible tells us that we've all been given a measure of faith. But I also believe that we've also all been given a measure of tolerance to deal with things differently. Because hear me now, we know what Jesus went through for us. The stripes, the criticism, the crown of thorns, all that. Can you imagine if that was Peter?
Yeah.
World War III.
Yeah.
In other words, all of us, we have like a limit when it comes down to our threshold.
Exactly.
And that's so important. Not just that, but when you put 2 words together, endurance and tolerance, endurance and tolerance, you come up with a word that's out of Scott's dictionary called swallerance. Each and every one of us, we know what we can swallow from what we cannot swallow, and so on. I'm sure that there are people that could have swallowed at the Oscar. Out there, people that could, and yet there are some people forget it. And so it was manifested, and thank God it's all in the past. But let me say this, haven't we all acted out of character?
Yeah.
Every single one of us, maybe except for the apostle now, because he's always cool, calm, and collective.
No, not always. but Bishop Scott, one of the things I realized that we are all different to a point in some ways. And there's a saying that strong people have strong weaknesses, and your weakness might not be mine. And so we could stand from afar and say what Will Smith did was wrong, and rightly so. But we might be in a different situation, in a compromising situation, not in terms of anger, but we can be weak or vulnerable in another area.
Yes, sir.
And so we are not weak in that area. We have full control of our anger and our temper and our temperament. And so we would not go there based on what happened. But in a certain different place, you put you in with a woman, you might act the way you're not supposed to, or with money, or in a different situation with jealousy or something else that you might succumb to. So we all have sinned. We all have sinned and come short of the glory of God, and we're not saying what he did was right. But it's funny when someone make a blunder, we can all get on the bandwagon and say what he's supposed to do and what he shouldn't do and what I would have done and so forth and so on. And we're not giving him a pass, but I'm saying he fell, he was vulnerable and at that moment, but we can be vulnerable in a different situation. So it just shows the human condition.
Yes, sir.
That we are all fragile to a point.
Amen.
We're all vulnerable.
But you know what, too, Apostle? I mean, all of us apply grace just to ourselves. If we are going through it, oh my goodness, give me some grace, show me some grace. Somebody else mess up, crucify him. He should have known better. He's at the award ceremony. Take the award, crucify him. I mean, because that person messes up and we can't relate to why they would mess up. So we make a full-on judgment call as, well, I wouldn't act like that, therefore, I'm better. Wow, what about the other 1,000 things you're failing at? Right? I mean, it's not because it's not being featured on television in front of thousands of people, doesn't mean you don't have things that would be highlighted just like that situation.
Amen. People will be people no matter what. Okay, let's go on to question number 1. Okay, we spent over 20 minutes on that portion, which was not even a question. Let's go on to question number 1. Okay, when is confrontation acceptable? Now, we must remember that we do have several different types of confrontation. Okay, we've got the physical confrontation. Okay, we've got the social confrontation when you have to clarify something with a person. Galatians chapter 2, verse 11. But when Peter was come to Antioch, okay, Paul said, I withstood him to the face because he was to be blamed. In other words, he acted hypocritical. When the people were not there, he ate with the Gentiles. But when the Jews showed up, guess what? He began to withdraw himself and so on. And Paul confronted him concerning that. Paul did not slap him across his face now, but he verbally confronted him. So the question is, when is confrontation acceptable? And here we are talking about confrontation. Okay, talk to me. Anyone that would like to start, or should I ask?
Go ahead.
Well, in certain, there are confrontation, and confrontation is a word that deals with, to a point hostility, or it's not a pleasant word to say, well, I'm meeting you to have a cup of coffee in a nice way. Somebody did something, it's a difficult situation, you probably was offended, and you confront. Now, we can confront physically, or we can confront verbally. And so I don't think there's a place for physical confrontation. But confrontation is awkward. Sometimes it can be uncomfortable, but sometimes it can be necessary. If someone is doing something to you that you don't like, sometimes you can tell them in a pleasant manner. And sometimes when it's going too far, you have to confront them and say, I don't like this, stop. So there are times when we need to confront. We need to confront our spouses sometimes, our children. We as parents, we see they're going on the wrong path. And we tell them 1 time, 2 times, 3 times, we gotta confront. And I remember there was a little book that calls it entitled Caring Enough to Confront. And sometimes, like at my age now, age shouldn't be a factor, but some things I don't care to confront. I can't change the world. I can't police the world. I can't straighten out everybody. I mean, if it's within my circle or my sphere, I'm a pastor. If there's leadership issue, I have to deal with it. I cannot put my head in the sand and bury my head and think it's going to solve itself or go away. There's the same problem never solves themselves. So there are times you have to be man enough. You have to be strong enough to confront. You have to care enough to confront because something is not going right. Something is off. Something needs to be addressed. Something needs to be fixed. And so that's one aspect of confronting, whether it's emotionally or verbally. But then confronting physically to settle the score, that's a poor way of handling things, more so as Christians. If I don't like what you do, I slap you. If you don't like what I do, I punch you. And by the way, we do that when it's someone we feel we could overpower. We pick our poison. If the guy is 6'5" and 230 pounds, we say we're not going to confront him physically. You know what I mean? So I believe in confrontation, but it must be done in a fair and a Christ-like manner.
Let me ask a question. What makes a person confrontational? You know, there are some people that, because of the words that comes out of their mouth, it's like you're afraid to confront them. But what really makes a person confrontational? Is it everyone that we want to confront, even verbally?
No.
When there's an issue and you are being offended, sometimes you could stay quiet, you could walk away, but sometimes you need to confront it because you're in the space. You work with the person every day, or you live with the person every day. You go to church with the person every week. You can't run away. You have to confront it. And so that's the only way you're going to resolve that, by confronting it. If you don't confront it, it will continue. And sometimes people can offend you without even knowing it. And if you ain't say nothing, they don't know, they keep doing it. There comes a time you're going to say, hey, Joe, you got to match the brakes here, brother.
Therefore, confrontation is necessary.
Yes.
It's absolutely okay. Great. Okay. Anyone else like to weigh in on question number one?
And there's a way how we handle it too, Bishop Scott. And also, I made a mistake. Is alopecia is the name of the disease. I pronounced it wrong. Please forgive me for my grammar or my pronunciation.
We won't confront you.
and Dr. Bishop Scott, then to when do you confront and where do you confront? Now, if my wife did something out of line, or I did something out of line, I wouldn't want her to correct me in front of the church. Right. Or I wouldn't want to correct her in front of the church. I wait till we get home.
Amen.
You understand what I'm saying? So confrontation, sometimes you could be putting down the person or belittling them by confronting them in front of people. You know, you have an office. You don't confront them from the pulpit. You know what I mean? There's ways of confronting things that can calm things down, or it can escalate things. For example, case in point, and I hope I'm not talking too long. They were saying that Chris Rock handled this thing with class, with grace, with dignity. He could have responded and everything could have been chaotic. He chose to be more gracious. In other words, he turned the other cheek.
Amen. And because of that, we hear that the following day, his tickets were going for like $40. And because of the way he handled himself,
that's right,
the tickets went up to like $300-400. Am I the only one that heard that?
No, that's
I think we all heard that. Now, question, suppose he had retaliated and they had a fist fight. Do you think that his tickets would have gone up in price?
Yeah.
No. His show would have been canceled. I think his show would have been canceled.
Not necessarily. I think people would have wanted to show up to hear exactly why he retaliated. And people like drama. Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. It's a funny thing.
Okay. Before we get there, the question is, when is confrontation acceptable? Bishop Wolliston, tell us, please, when is it really acceptable?
That's a very good question, Bishop. You know, the old folks used to say, it's not what you do, it's how you do it. It's what you say, it's how you say it. Apostle, laid it out very well. And, talking about the public and also the private. Is it a case, or what about the case of self-defense? If someone comes in and breaks into my home and, I'm defending my family and defending my wife and my children, I mean, confrontation is definitely not only acceptable, it's doable, it's gonna happen, especially being the man of the house. I don't think it's a time to put on my priestly robe at that time. I'm looking for a bat or something, because, hey, God calls us into, as fools, but He don't keep us as fools. You got to do something. You got to protect, the same way, like if you're hungry, you find food for your family. So when is it acceptable? That's a good question. It's acceptable when it's necessary. And at the same time, Bishop, we're not given a pass. And I would not want anyone to take away from from the Will Smith situation, or what we're saying here tonight, that violence is the way to go, or, as Christians or non-Christians, because it really never solves anything. I might add to that also, it could depend on the level of your faith. And I'll tell you why I say that. I remember real quickly, my mom, when she was about 12 years old, I'll never forget, she said that in her school, kids came to fight her. They came all around, and, girls, and, it's a drama time. And guess what she did? She knelt down in the middle of the playground and repeated the Lord's Prayer. True story. Mm. And when she got up, they were all gone. Maybe she couldn't fight. I don't know, but she definitely could pray. So I think it has to do with the level of our faith and our maturity. We just talked about how Chris Rock responded. I think it was a class act. I don't know if I could do that, Bishop. I'm being honest with you. I mean, public, I don't know. You just don't know. But I applaud him. He was gracious. And I think he did the right thing, the way how he responded.
Yes, sir. I agree with you. Okay, Dr. Phil, how say you?
Bishop,
Yes.
Confrontation is, like you said, a very funny thing. I think everything has to be measured. For instance, I usually give people the benefit of the doubt, at least the first couple times, right?
7 times 70.
They cross the line. Okay, you might have made a mistake. You might be thinking about somebody else, right? And so I give them the benefit of the doubt. Then when I'm sure they're targeting me, I approach them and say, so what's up? What's the problem, right? And, we talk about it, we try to be rational and work it out verbally, right? Once we found out what the root is. Now, if somebody approaches me and they have their war face on, I may not ask a question first because I don't want nobody hitting me unawares, right? So sometimes in some occasions, I don't know anybody who's been in that kind of a situation, but sometimes in some occasions, you have to use force first and then say, hey, brother, what's the problem?
In other words, shoot first.
Yeah, ask questions later, like, hey, what's the problem? Can we talk about it? Because sometimes people get irrational and they're in a very wrong space and you have become their target. And so, you have to learn, you have to measure when and which confrontation is necessary. That's my answer to that.
Okay, before we should hear from Pastor Mackenzie, because I know that he's coming up with something great. I can just see it on his face. Okay, what would you say is the art of healthy confrontation? What's the artistry? Because there are some people, when they do come or approach you, they come with a negative attitude. Not just that, but they come pointing their finger at you, and so forth. They don't choose their words carefully. It's like anything that comes to their mouth, they say it. So the question is this: what's the art of healthy, or the artistry of healthy confrontation?
Well, the Bible says a soft answer turn away wrath.
Sure.
I think, again, it's the approach. I mean, they say you should fight fire with fire. In the police force, at least they're taught to de-escalate a situation. And that would probably be my approach. And I've seen that many times. And, you can say a lot by not saying nothing, Bishop. Mm-hmm. You can say a lot by your demeanor, by your presentation. And sometimes people just want to steam off. I've had it done to me many times. And I just sit there and I take it. And they look foolish afterwards, Bishop. And guess what they have to do? They have to apologize.
Yes.
They have to say they're sorry. So it's all with the approach, how you approach. And, Jesus said, look, don't you know I have power? I have power, but he decided to be silent. So, yeah.
And that's so important, the way we come, the word that we choose, our attitude, our body language. Oh God, all of these things are very, very much important. Okay, now let's hear from the youngest on the panel. It's coming with a tremendous amount of wisdom. Pastor Mackenzie, when is confrontation acceptable?
Well, the Bible declares from the days of John the Baptist till now, the kingdom of, I'm playing. I'm not telling us to take anything by force, by violence.
That's Bible.
I piggyback off of what everybody has said so far. It's been amazing. Bishop Wolliston just talked about the approach, and I'll get to when is it acceptable. But the approach is very key, because a lot of times our words, and not just our words, but as Bishop Scott just said, our body language, our nonverbal cues can cause so much anger and animosity to arise in individuals. And a lot of times when we approach situations, we approach it more from an accusatory standpoint than an exploratory standpoint. So it's all based on our approach that really level sets the ability for confrontation to be effective. Now, as we talk about confrontation, let's separate confrontation from violence, because we have to make a separation there, because you can confront without getting violent. Confrontation doesn't necessarily mean that it should be coupled with aggression, because the Bible tells us about the necessity to confront. Yes. The Bible says in St. Matthew 18:15-17, moreover, if thy brother shall trespass against thee, go and tell him his fault. That means confront between thee and him alone. And if he shall hear thee, thou hast gained a brother. But if he will not hear thee, then take with thee one or two more, that in the mouth of 2 or 3 witnesses every word shall be established. And if he shall neglect to hear them, tell it unto the church. But if he neglect to hear the church, let him be unto thee as a heathen man and a publican. This is dealing with confrontation, but it's not dealing with physical confrontation. It's dealing with how to confront an issue so that it can be resolved. So if we are confronting, it should be with the mindset that whatever the issue is, it can be resolved. And a lot of times confrontation, as we said before, it is necessary. What we like to do is we'll have a situation, and instead of dealing with it, we drive around it. We go this way, and we never deal with the actual situation. If you don't deal with it, it's just going to continue to stay there and fester and fester and fester until it can't fester anymore, until it just boils over. So confrontation is necessary, but it all depends on how we confront. I love what we just said a while ago. When and where is also important. When and where. You can't say certain things around certain people and expect it to have the same effectiveness as if you were to say it in private. So we must use wisdom in confrontation. The pulpit is not a place to confront. And sometimes we use the pulpit, amen, as a place to confront and deal with issues. Even in our messages, sometimes we're saying, not us, not I'm just saying, but even sometimes within the confines and the context of a message, just because we heard certain things, we preach on it and we deal with it from that standpoint. That's not the way to confront. As a matter of fact, what you'll end up doing is losing a soul. And we talked about church hurt some time ago in our Bible study. And we have a lot of individuals that are dealing with church hurt and say, I'm not coming back to church. I don't want to deal with any more churches. I don't want to deal with any more pastors. I don't want to deal with any more elders, simply because a situation was confronted incorrectly. We did not confront it the correct way. So confrontation is necessary, but it all depends on how we do it. I'll leave you with this, and I'll talk about physical confrontation now. And sometimes even the need to get a little physical and stand up for what you believe in, even when it comes to the house of God. We had a concert some years ago. A young lady that Bishop Wolliston, very well, she sings, was singing, and a man drunk off the street came in. Drunk off the street. I don't know how he passed the ushers. That's a different topic for a different day. Passed the ushers. They need to be retrained. Passed the ushers, went all the way up on the pulpit, grabbed the microphone from her while she's singing. So guess what we did? The MC, he didn't say, young man, please put down the microphone. He he physically removed him from the audience, or removed them from the concert. So there's certain things, and there's certain ways that you have to deal with certain situations. Physical shouldn't be our first way to deal with it. But as you said, Bishop Wolliston, and if it comes to a case of even self-defense, if my children are being assaulted, wife is being assaulted, and I have the opportunity to defend them, I'm not gonna say, keep assaulting them, mister, keep hurting them. No, y'all gonna have to bail me out that night. God bless you.
So let me ask you a question. When certain things happen, okay, that you do have to confront, should you sit down on it for a week or two and mumble it over in your mind, or should you hit the nail on the head immediately? Now, remember this, that some people wait and allow it to build up inside of them. And yet there are some people who have it already built up, and they have to wait for it to vent, for it to come out, or for them to cool down before they confront. So when something happens, when should we deal with it? Immediately? Should we wait, or what?
That's a trick question. That's a trick question. I'll say this, and then I'll let everybody, because I wouldn't wait a week or two. However, I also might not deal with it immediately, because I might be so hot that I might say the wrong thing and do the wrong thing in that moment. So sometimes the immediate reaction might not always be the best reaction, because we might react out of impulse and anger. So sometimes we do have to sit down for like 30 seconds, a minute, catch ourselves up, hold on, and then deal with the situation. But then to sit on it for a week or two, no, we can't. But I think there should be a little waiting period just to make sure that we respond correctly, but not too long.
Anyone else?
I certainly believe it depends on the situation.
That too.
Right.
Some things we can handle it right away, because let's say, for example, I'm a pastor and something happened in the church with someone. Sometimes it's good to deal with it right there and then, because now you're using the moment to teach, you're using the moment to instruct, you're using the moment to resolve. And then again, if something happened with my wife, you wait until I come home. You wait until I take off my shoes. You wait until I take a shower, and then we talk. So it depends on the situation. You know, we handle things differently, depends on the circumstances. So I cannot say handle it right away or not. Some things you handle right away. Something you don't let it foster. It lose the moment. It lose the sense of what happened there and then. If you go to address it in 2 weeks, 3 weeks, it lose the sting, it lose the essence. You know, so you handle it there and then, and you move on. Some things, again, you let it simmer for a while, you let cooler heads prevail, and then later on, you approach the situation. So you have to learn how to dissect. That's why the psalmist said, teach me to number my days so I may apply my heart to wisdom. Teach me how to navigate. Teach me how to orchestrate. I have to learn when to hold and when to fold. So it's not one size fits all. You have to be discerning, you have to be mature, and you have to be wise in dealing with situations.
Anyone else like to weigh in? Well, let me ask another question, because I got a whole slew of questions to ask, because as pastors, we have to confront. Now, the question is this: how can I improve my confrontational skills? Because as pastors, we have to be careful how we confront, because remember, we have souls in our hands. And if we act, we can lose them. And that we don't want to do. So how can we improve our confrontational skills? What else?
I think someone used the word measured earlier. And, you know, you have to look at, you know, I can confront a pastor, Richard, or apostle, because I know they're mature men of God or mature Christian. It's different than someone who's newly in the faith or not as strong in the faith, because as you said, Bishop, we could win a soul or lose a soul. You know, so your approach have to be measured. You know, I like what Pastor McKenzie said. I think he mentioned that, you know, sometimes you have to take don't do it in anger. as much as you are enraged, but just take time and just relax, because you're hot-headed. And it's kind of like, sometimes when we were spanking our children, if we're not careful, we're not really trying to teach them a lesson. We're getting the anger. We're using anger to discipline, and that's not very good. It's never good at all. So I think the measured approach, and look at the individual. Peter wasn't strong in his faith, and Jesus said, okay, I'm going to pray for you. I'm going to pray for you. And when you're converted, strengthen your brethren. So it's a measured approach, Bishop. It's not a one size fit all. There's some mature Christians. I have people in my church, I can boom, 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 and they'll smile and they're good. Others, I have to be gentle, because they don't have that same maturity level to take a discipline as such.
Anyone else?
One of the things that's helped me, Bishop, is understanding the personalities I'm dealing with. A lot of times, if someone has a confrontational personality, meaning when they're confronted with fight or flight, they will choose to fight 100% of the time, right? So, sometimes if you're dealing with that type of a personality, your approach should fit not just the situation, but the personality that you're dealing with, right? And like Bishop Wolliston said, really just kind of measure, how serious is this situation? Is it, like Apostle Rojas would ask, what are the spoils? Are you gonna walk away with anything? Is it worth getting down and dirty for this? Or should you just kind of say, you know what? Bygones to this, because there's some things, yeah, you have to confront, but it's not everything needs confrontation, right? Not everything deserves for us to pick up at arms and start, dealing with it that way. So, I'm measuring it out and saying, is it worth confronting someone? Is it worth the conflict? What are the damages that could be resulted from conflicting with this person or confronting this person? Like there's some people in church that the moment you confront them about something, it gets worse because they're connected to the gossip pool. And so your small confrontation over the color of the walls, becomes this big confrontation. See, pastor only listens to so and so, and they don't listen to me. And all this thing can go on. So, measure the weight of what, confrontation you're going to deal with.
Amen. And the Bible says that the word of God is sharp. Words can be very, very sharp, and words can cut. So I think it's also very much important that we weigh our words and choose our words very, very carefully. Okay, because there are some people, as you said, they're like babies. They are like babies. Milk, 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 milk. And you have to choose your words very, very carefully. And that's why it was Paul that had a verbal confrontation with the people. Says that, come on, man, it's now not time for you to be drinking milk. You ought to be eating meat, steak and yam and banana and things like that. Okay, so in confronting people, we have to definitely watch our words very, very carefully. It puts me in mind when the prodigal boy came back home. The father ran to him, gave him a robe, a ring, and shoes. But what really stood out to me is this, that the father didn't even bathe him. Didn't even bathe him, put a robe on him. Why? To cover that shame. He was just coming out of the pig's pen. His feet had mud. Put shoes, cover him. And then the ring of sonship. And every now and then, we have to be careful that we try our best to cover. Not to overcover, but to cover. And that is so important. Okay, let's go on. Now, if anyone has anything else to say concerning question number one, many things about it, you can, please go ahead.
Yes, Bishop. I on that same subject, I believe tone is critical because that sends a message.
Yes, sir.
And going back to the scriptures, it said we must speak the truth in love.
Yes, sir.
You know, I could tell someone something without making them feel bad, without making them feel ashamed or less than. And I could still put my arm around them and speak the truth in love.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
You know, I give my wife permission, she gave me permission so that we could correct each other. Because I rather she correct me home than I embarrass myself in public.
Amen.
So case in point, my wife would put on a dress on Sunday morning and she'll turn around. She said, how does that look? And I said, baby, that look a little too tight. Or that's look good. But we do that in-house. So that when we go out there, somebody could say, did you see how the pastor wife dressed this morning? You know, so we take care of that in-house, you know, and we deal with things in private. So when we go out in public, we okay. So again, we speak the truth in love. Now, I can speak the truth and make you feel shame and embarrass you and belittle you. And I said, it's the truth. The truth hurts. No, it's the manner or the tone in which we go about it.
And
that's a very good point the apostle brought up. That's a very good point real quickly. Tone. And I do that a lot. I mean, you know, it's the carrot approach, but you know what's coming after the carrot. You know, it's a stick, you know what I mean? But your approach is, listen, you know, and you just butter them up, and it's the approach, and then you just hit it and drop it. But, you know, the approach and tone is but if you start out with, you know, you this and you that, and you shouldn't have done this, and you know better than this, right there, they're on the defensive, and they won't be able to see the error of their ways because they're being defensive, humiliated, embarrassed. Then, I mean, you've lost that person. Well, I'm not going to go back to that church, and I'll take me off this committee, and I can't do nothing right. But the approach and the tone, that says a lot.
Amen.
Very quickly, Bishop.
Please.
The question that you had asked a while ago was, how do we improve the way that we confront? I believe to that magnitude. As leaders, I think that this is where accountability really comes in, and really tapping into our fathers and mothers in the faith. This is why every pastor, as we said, needs a pastor, every bishop needs a bishop. So because there are times when that we within ourselves think that we're doing right, and we don't even understand that our tone and our words are hurtful. Yes. Remember, before Paul became Paul and he was Saul, he thought that he was doing the right thing. He thought that he really thought that he was doing the right thing. It wasn't until his eyes were opened that he was blinded, and his eyes were his spiritual eyes were opened, that he realized that all that time I was messed up. And so it is even in this conversation. This is why we need accountability partners like this. People that will say, listen, man, I know you meant good, but that's probably not the way that you should go about doing it. And when we are corrected in love, we should be able to take the criticism, constructive criticism, and actually apply it to ourselves so that change can actually be brought about. So that's very important, that even as leaders, that we're willing to listen, take advice, and change.
Pastor McKenzie, do you think age and maturity has a lot to do with how we respond and deal with certain issues? Reason why I say that, because when I was much younger, like yourself, you know, just a few years ago, you know, the way how I dealt with issues, especially with parishioners, it's not the way how I do it now. Yeah. Because as you mentioned before, you know, I'm the pastor, and what I say go, and you're hot-headed and, you know, whatever. And that, but now you're older, you're wiser. Do you think age and maturity has a lot to do with how we deal with conflicts?
Not necessarily age, but definitely maturity.
Yeah.
Definitely maturity and experience, because there are some individuals that are 80 years old, but still not mature.
Amen. Very wise. I'm into that. But another thing that's important, honestly, is that sometimes when you meet some people that are very hot-headed, and you know that at that particular time, you can't even talk to them. So as a pastor, psychologist, you have to set the stage. You have to prepare the stage. You know what I mean? You've got to take it from another handle. Show them where they have matured. Okay, bring a certain amount of peace to them before you even confront them. Because sometimes when you see the anger, the animosity in them, if you start confronting them, then you know that you are fighting a losing battle, and that confrontation is going to lead to something else. So it's important that as pastors, sometimes we learn to set the stage. Set the stage. Just like Bishop Scott, I'm going to Trinidad and I've already set the stage. I've got the beat behind me. I've got the coconut tree there.
Come on.
Stage has been set. Okay. Is there anyone? Yes, sir.
What about, and I've experienced this many, many a times.
Yes, sir.
What about when your intention is well and people take it the wrong way? And you know, we all Christians, we say for a long time. Over the years of ministry, I find that people don't like to be corrected for the most part. Even those who say for a long time hold position in the church. You know, so then there's a difference when you're putting down someone or talking down someone or always finding fault. Nobody wants to be, you know, come out that way.
Mm-hmm.
But when you have good intentions, you use wisdom, you manage your voice, you use temperament, you use maturity, you use experience. And no matter how you use diplomacy, the person is offended.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's very similar to what we're talking about with Chris Rock and Will Smith, right? When he gave the joke, his response was, "This is a light joke. I mean, this is very light." It was light to him, but heavy to somebody else, right? And so sometimes even when you're kind of just you're thinking that, okay, it's just a light conversation. It's light to us, but it may be heavy to another person, and they're offended by what was said. You know, I mean, there's several even cultural instances where there's certain things in the Jamaican culture that is totally acceptable, and we laugh and we, say, man, this was funny. But you get into another culture and you do the same thing, they say, wow, that was very hurtful. That was an insult. And so you in the space that you're in, we have to know what kind of room we're standing in. And what kind of jokes are acceptable and not acceptable. Not everything that's culturally acceptable to me will be acceptable in a crowd of people who are Caucasian or Asian, and so on and so forth.
But Dr. Phil, I think what Apostle is saying is, like, I was just speaking about the sonship thing and the father thing and the mother thing. He, as a father in the faith, has identified a weakness in one of his sons or daughters in the faith. And he's trying wholeheartedly to correct them in love, to show them that there's a better way to approach a subject. But instead of them receiving it,
right,
and changing, they become defensive. They become defensive, and it's true. It's a little difficult because even as leaders, sometimes you wholeheartedly want to see the best out of somebody, and you're trying, but they're just not receiving it. So I think what he's saying is, what do you do in that type of situation when you're genuinely trying to help, but it's not being received?
And what do you do, Pastor McKenzie? What's done? What should we do?
That's what I'm asking you.
Well, I had a situation. No, okay, that's good. That's good.
That's the point.
Why I'm asking that is because I had a similar situation, not in my immediate ministry, but on the outside. And given the instructions and everything else, and the person just couldn't see it, and, well, we've done it this way. So I said to my team, let them be. Let them be. Because there's some things people have to learn by their own experience.
Yes, over time, yes.
Over time. You don't want to see them crash, but they will crash if they keep going down the road. You're older, you're wiser, and they can't see what you see, and they can't understand what you're saying. And I just said, listen, okay, we're not going to have a confrontation or make contention. Just let them be, because they will come back and say, Bishop, you know what? You were right. If their pride won't allow them to. So sometimes in a situation like that, you just got to let them be.
But no, that was the point I'm making, though, is that their blockades in communication, whereas sometimes we're saying something and it seems very simple, like because of our experience, because of our background, it's very simple to us. But let's say somebody, their education level is up to 4th grade, and you graduated college, right? You're communicating something to someone that they may not even understand where you're coming from, right? And so no matter how you say it, no matter how many times you say it, because of their ability to translate what you're saying to them, it's like, man, you're frustrating me because of even my educational level. Some people get frustrated. Like for instance, if someone is a Spanish speaking person, not to pick out that specific language, but if their first language isn't English, I've seen where even on the job, you're trying to explain something, and because there's a language barrier, there's frustration. And so now the manager is thinking, well, they don't want to listen. And in their mind, they're going, I don't understand a word he's saying. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so Doc, let's take away the Spanish for a second. Does the person have a teachable spirit?
That's it.
Are you teachable? So you can have blockage, you can have even language, but are you teachable? And sometimes you find some of these individuals, they're not teachable, maybe because they're gifted in different areas and they feel that, oh, I'm anointed. Listen to me. I've said it many times. Just because you're anointed by God, it doesn't guarantee success or a successful ministry.
And let me also add this, gentlemen, that life is a learning experience. And let me say this, that a couple of weeks ago, I preached on graduating fish university. And God put Jonah in the belly of the fish for him to learn some things. And even when he graduated via vomit, he was preaching grace, yet he had hatred in his heart.
Wow.
Think about it. Yeah. So it's like some people, don't feel bad with me, never learn.
Wow.
God put him in the fish's belly. When he got the call from God, he didn't pray. But God showed him, you got to pray. And even when he was down deck, the Bible tells me that he was fast asleep. The question is, how can you sleep at a time like this? He was sleeping, but God wanted to get his attention, put him in the belly of the fish. There he prayed for the time he was there. But even when he graduated, came out, preaching grace, but full of hate. Did he learn everything? He learned something, but not everything. And don't feel bad with me. There are people in our church just like Jonah. And remember that sometimes we don't live up to our name. The name Jonah, I think it means a dove. A dove. And a dove is emblematic of the Holy Spirit and peace. And yet he made more havoc, war, than anything else. Jonah. We don't live up to our name. And so preaching grace, but animosity and hatred in his heart, to the degree that it was easier for God to get 120 people to repent than one preacher man. Oh God, man! I mean, we could spend a month on that. Okay. Anything else on question number 1? Listen, man, we only have 30 minutes left. Dr. Phil, it's your fault, sir. Every time you come on, I mean, time flies. So let's get on to question number 2. If
we got a banning from the Bishop's Corner.
The question is this: what role does self-control have in managing confrontation. I believe it was Bishop Neville Wolliston that pointed out 1 Corinthians 9:27 when Paul said, "But I bring under my body and bring it into subjection, lest when I preached unto others, I myself be a castaway." And every now and then we have to, don't feel bad with me, this is not good English, but we have to small up ourselves. We have to come on down. So the question is, what role does self-control have in managing confrontation?
It should have a primary role or the primary role. And I think, again, it speaks to our level of maturity, our level of faith, sometimes I see pastors, they play the pastor's card or the bishop's card. Well, I'm the bishop, I'm the pastor. It doesn't take, we're not denying that. You will always be the pastor, or you'll always be the bishop. That's your call, that's your title. But Paul says, to all men, I become all things that I might win some. I may not win them all, but I become what I need to become. So if we have to take a lower seat, a lower spot to win a situation, to win a soul, and to avoid confrontation, I don't see nothing wrong with that. So yes, self-control should be primary, because again, and we see at the Oscars, it's the humanity that came out of this gentleman. The humor, we're not making an excuse, but he had a human moment, if you will, an emotional outburst. And now you look back at the ramifications and you said, woulda, shoulda, coulda. Why do it if you're going to regret it?
Okay. Gentlemen.
Well, self-control speaks for itself. The only thing you really do have any control over is yourself. You can't control anybody else. And so just to be aware, I think being just aware of who you are, where you are, and why you are there. And I'm talking just not to be complicated about it, but like from a mental, in your mental state, what's your emotional state, right? Are you able to deal with that situation properly? Weighing yourself out before engaging in a confrontation, I think is very important and is a big part of self-control. Just kind of questioning yourself on whether or not you are in any form or shape to deal with that type of situation, rather than dealing with it emotionally.
Correct. I think that this is something that we've already been spoken of. But as Bishop Wolliston said, self-control is primary in terms of managing confrontation. As a matter of fact, it is one of the fruit of the Spirit. The Bible speaks of temperance, which is a matter of self-control, being even keeled, being able to handle a situation with dignity, with class, with looking at the bigger picture. And that's something else when it comes to confrontation. We view confrontation in the moment. Many times we view it in the moment, but sometimes we have to take a step back and look at the bigger picture. When we evaluate the bigger picture, it will allow us to approach it differently. So self-control it's paramount in order for confrontation to yield the result that we want it to yield, which is a change in a positive direction. So we don't have to keep dealing with the same thing over and over and over again.
So let me ask you a question, gentlemen. Now, I can't say ladies and gentlemen. So
Yeah.
How do we increase self-control? Can we increase it? How do we really increase self-control? Because as pastors and bishops and apostles, we need.
I think the bishop, they say practice becomes perfect. And I think for me, I always remind myself of the role that I play or the role that I have, and try to live up to that as much as I possibly can. Yes, I'll have a human moment. Yes, I'll have an emotional moment. But, I have to keep reminding myself, my position as a pastor, as a bishop, as a leader, and others are looking to me for leadership. Again, it doesn't mean I can't have a human moment or a emotional moment, but for me, I just, I remind myself the role that I play and those who are looking up to me for leadership and for guidance. That's my reminder.
And one of the things that we can do, we can try our best to deplete our ego.
Yeah.
Think about it.
Yeah.
The depletion.
That's hard to do.
Not easy. But
Not
there
easy.
again, like that's why to whom much is given.
What
You
you said.
understand?
Right.
We've got to take some steps that other people won't,
Yeah.
because the thing is, like, we have a congregation,
Yeah.
my God, that we have to take to heaven. And God knows if God has given you 100, you want to take that 100 to heaven, not just 50 of them. So a lot really depends on us. The question is, what role does self-control have in managing confrontation? Anyone else like to weigh in on that?
Well, self-control, like Pastor Mackenzie said, is one of the fruits of the Spirit.
Mhm.
And we don't want to sit here and underestimate the power of the flesh. Even Paul said, the things I hate to do, I end up doing it. There's a constant battlefield that's taking place in the mind. And it's easy to sit here under calm circumstances and speak like pastors and apostles and bishops and, in a cool moment. But when in the heat of the moment, sometimes you yourself don't know how you will respond.
That's true.
So everybody Monday morning quarterback. Will Smith stood up. His life is public. He should have known better. There's no place for this and that and the third. Now, understand something. His wife was, and again, you never know what people are going through. We see people's faces. We don't know what they're dealing with. Everybody's dealing with something. Everybody has some kind of challenges. Even though we are men of God, even though we are pastors, we face things, all right? So now, maybe if that was a style and she cut her hair, no big deal, G.I. Joe, But now she is suffering with this disease, alopecia, and the whole world is listening. The whole world is watching. Millions of people. Listen, no matter how deep we are, nobody likes to be embarrassed.
Not at all.
And when you're backed up in a corner, you're lashed out, you respond without time to think.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the next morning, you could sit down, you could analyze, you could try to reason, you could try to, sort things out. But in the heat of the moment, even Peter drew his sword, cut off the guy's ear. Yeah, and Jesus said, put it back, because Peter lost his cool, So sometime in the heat of the moment, we didn't have time to sit down in a calm environment and reason. And I'm not making an excuse for it. And so we lashed out. Under normal circumstances, I would have been fine. But now my wife is hurting, and probably Chris Rock didn't even know she suffered with alopecia. He didn't know she had that disease. So he's making a G.I.J. joke, ha, ha, ha. The all lives is public, the all comedians, big deal. It's only a joke, man. But it was only a joke, but he understand the pain that his wife was going through. As a matter of fact, he laughed. But when he saw her pain, he said, I got to defend her. So in a sense, somebody would look at this guy and say, kudos to him. He was standing up for his wife. And somebody would have said, he could have gone up there and say, listen, man, come on, man. That was nice, man. My wife is hurting, man. She's going through. I would like you to apologize. That could have been different.
Apostle, yes. I hear you. And piggyback to what Pastor Mackenzie said a moment ago. Or was it Dr. Phil? The only thing that we can control when it comes to self-control is us, is me. You understand? Now, Paul says, and we're not trying to oversimplify, be over spiritual, but let's talk Bible. I die daily. He don't trust himself. I've got to die daily because I can't trust this thing called the flesh, whether it's moral, whether it's power, women, money, whatever. We talked about this before. I cannot trust this thing called flesh. So I have a responsibility to make sure daily I die again, because this flesh will keep on rising up and getting bigger and stronger and stronger. I got to keep on killing it because I have to have control. We have to, because at the end of the day, you are, I get the frustration with his wife. I get the hurt. I get the pain. I get all of that. But at the end of the day, you're still responsible for what you do. And not saying that you're saying he should get a pass. You didn't say that, and we're not saying that. But at the end of the day, Apostle, and all of us, me, myself, because had they said if it was anybody else, they would have been locked up and gone to jail.
Yeah.
Because they did something, what he did. He got a pass because what, Chris Rock decided, I don't want to press charges? No, it's more than that. And then you have almost everybody applauding his behavior. That is not okay. What is the message being sent there? Oh, you don't like what somebody say about your wife or your best, whoever, go slap him upside the head? No, absolutely not. So for us, we have to make sure we do what Paul says, die daily, because this thing called flesh, you can't trust it, whether it's a pretty woman, whether it's a this, whether it's money, whether it's fame, whether it's power, whether it's whatever, prestige, we can't trust this thing. Our best remedy is die daily.
Yeah, this flesh will embarrass you, because now remember that as you, Apostle Rojas, made mention that Peter took out his sword. Now, in all honesty, let me say this, and people don't see this, but Peter was not aiming for the ears. I'm sorry, he was not aiming for the ears. Okay, Peter was not a swordsman. He was a fisherman. Okay, so but hear me, the Holy Spirit, Jesus was there and allowed that high priest servant to move his head, so that now look how the Lord made Peter look like a professional swordsman. He wasn't a swordsman. He was really aiming for the neck, but when you've got the Lord beside you, he makes you look better than you really are. But the question that I want to put to you men is this: the benefits of self-control. What are the benefits of self-control? Okay, I want
to say something first, just to what Bishop Wolliston said. Now, the census is that the people were clapping because they thought it was a part of the program. They weren't sure that it was a real altercation.
Really?
And yeah, they weren't sure it was a real altercation. So after they really found out that it was a real altercation, the whole thing became kind of awkward, because now they're like, this happened at the Oscars, right? Versus.
So they thought it was part of the act.
They thought it was a part of the act. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
I wasn't aware of that.
What I'm saying to Bishop Wolliston, I'm saying in the heat of the moment, it's different. Not saying it's okay, not saying it's right. I'm saying in the heat of the moment,
correct,
it's way more different than when we sit down in a cool environment.
True.
He's embarrassed before millions. And again, we're not giving him a pass.
Right.
He's embarrassed before millions of people, different countries. I forget how much countries this is streaming to. Mm-hmm. And here he is, I've got to act. And he didn't act right. So I'm saying in the heat of the moment, sometimes we do things that we embarrass about it after.
True.
Mm-hmm.
True. And at the time when you were making the judgment call, everything inside of you justified the action. Mm-hmm. Like, yeah, I'm going to get up and slap him. And then he has somebody else inside of him, but if you do that, it might affect your career. I don't care. Look at my wife. I should be upset. It's like, yeah, you should be upset. It's justified. Yeah, it's justified. Those two, the justification people in your head, the judges in your head that tell you what you're doing right now is okay. And you get all the votes in the room that say, aye, go ahead and slap him. And after you do it, you go, I should never take counsel from myself.
One voice is saying this, another voice is saying that.
Yeah.
And it happens all the time. And sometimes we get confused and we listen to the wrong voice. But are there any benefits in self-control? Are there any benefits in controlling yourself?
Of course, you come out smelling like a rose, Bishop.
Sure, of course, not just that, but self-control can help reduce impulsive behavior. Self-control. I mean, sometimes like we wake up at 2 o'clock in the morning and we feel like we want oxtail. No, I'm sorry, no. Fish. Ice cream. But self-control. You know what I mean? It's like a man who has a weakness for, the female and so forth, and is married, but self-control, and that's so easy. Self-control can also help you curtail your high temperature, anger, and so forth. And especially as pastors, we see so many things that would get us angry, but we've got to sometimes just bite our tongue. Self-control. Sometimes in the church, in the service, on a Sunday, you see some things happening, and my God, and everything is being streamed.
Yep.
And so
Yep.
forth. You know what I mean? You want to just, you know what I mean? But self-control. So there are benefits, self-control. Go ahead.
Okay, I have a question, okay? Because the whole time we're talking about self-control, I'm thinking about the statement. I'm sure somebody that is, just a member is thinking this too. I've heard pastors use the term godly anger, right? They were angry, and so therefore they responded a certain way. What's the difference between, because some of the times I've seen that exercised, it's just outright anger. It's not
has nothing to do with God.
I mean, they could throw over a bench and streaming and yelling at people, and then they go, "My spirit is angry."
Where's
the line on that? I want to know.
No, but we're entitled to be angry.
Yeah.
We're human. The Bible says, be angry and sin not. Or don't
scripture.
let the sun go down upon your wrath.
Mm.
Now, if you follow through the anger with sin and it manifests, it's different.
Yeah.
It could cause you to get locked up. It could cause you to go to jail. You could lose your house. You could get a lawsuit. You could be angry, but sin not. Don't let the sun go down on it. Don't take it to bear. Don't carry the grudge with you. You know what I mean? So being angry is a part of humanity.
Someone mentioned the fact that Jesus walked into the temple and threw over, the things and things like that. And that was justifiable and so forth, because the people had turned his house
a den of thieves
and so forth. So in that case, we can see that. But some of us pastors, man, I mean, we do things and then we call it. I see where you're going.
I mean, they curse and they throw the benches over, and then they go, "My spirit is angry." Dude, you just mashed up half your church.
blame it on the spirit.
Now, the last question, we only have 5 minutes, and just think about this. How should you respond when you are offended? We see how Chris Rock responded, and we can all applaud him for that. I mean, that was fantastic. I mean, to me, at that time, Chris looked like he was saved, sanctified, and filled with the Holy Spirit and living a godly life. At that time, it looked that way. Now, the question is, how should you respond when you are offended? Bishop Wolliston, if you're offended, how should you respond? Tell me.
Well, you can respond the godly way or the my personal experience, Bishop, I've always taken the low road, to be quite honest with you, because at the end of the day, I'm always vindicated, really. And, I don't have to prove anything. I really, really don't. So for me personally, I just take the low road and let everything play itself out. And like I said, I would say the majority of time I've been vindicated. So for me, I take the low road. I really do.
Beautiful. Dr. Phil?
Bishop,
how would you respond when you're offended?
When I'm offended, now I have to for me, it's a different process. I have to go from being offended to why am I offended, and why did what was ever said and done offended me? So I interrogate myself as to why am I offended, right? And after usually interrogating myself, I find that I may have really no reason to be offended, and this person may not even be directing their frustration towards the right person. So I usually give the benefit of the doubt. and say, well, you know what, this person doesn't normally approach me this way. You know, I'm not going to take offense to this right at this moment. And I'm going to, you know, it may sound spiritual, but I just say, look, I'm just going to let them be. I'm going to give them a pass, you know, give them a human moment.
Amen.
And a lot of times, like the next day, they'll come to me and they'll go, you know, man, I'm sorry I said that to you the way I did. You know, I was just going through this. And they'll tell you the reason why, you know, they were in that kind of a mode. So sometimes it's just a matter of just even keeping your calm and giving somebody a pass and letting them be human for that moment, you know, because usually when they come around to their normal self, you know, they'll apologize to you. If they're a decent person, they'll apologize.
How many passes do they get?
Good question.
One for the Father, one for the Son.
70 times.
We got 2 minutes left. The Bible said, if a man offend not in words, the same is a perfect man.
Perfect man.
Okay, spiritually mature. We got 2 minutes left. Pastor Mackenzie, how say you, sir?
Take a step back. Don't respond right away if I'm offended. But the word that we've been using all day, confront, and advise them. Remember, I didn't say fight. I didn't say fight. I said
use the fivefold ministry. Should I?
Don't use the Will Smith. No, but confront and advise them. Listen, you know what you may have said was offensive to me, so that they know how to hopefully change their ways and not do the same thing again and again and again. All right.
Thank you, sir. Apostle.
Well, you know, everyone says, you know, take the low road, you know, step back. If you offend me, I'm offended. I'm human. Don't tell me I can't feel offended. It's how I respond to the offense. Thank you.
Yeah, we respond by taking the low road.
No. We show them, listen, it's okay to let you know I'm offended.
Yeah, of course, confront it.
It doesn't make me deep, it doesn't make me less than. If I'm offended, I'm offended. And sometimes we need to keep it real.
Right.
You know, sometimes we act like we're not human. We got blood flowing in our vessels. We are offended. Not every time, well, we say the Lord's Prayer, we speak in tongues, or we walk the other way. No, I'm offended. You hurt my feelings. I'm offended.
Amen. Amen. Thank you, man of God.
And it's okay.
It's 9:30. Okay, let me just close by saying this, that the root of your attitude may be hidden, but the fruit is always visible. The fruit is always visible. This is Bishop Scott from the Bishop's Corner saying good night, goodbye, all being well. See you next week, same time on the Bishop's Corner. Bye-bye now.